It's Pooh fam, peace and blessings. This is Derric Rau Khu more. And you know, after talking, reading, studying with, my elders when they were alive, after talking to my parents, grandparents, great grandparents, great aunts and uncles, I've been saying this for the longest. I never heard anyone in our home or in our family use the word hoodoo. Now, I went ahead and I've also said that I've talked to family and friends in Detroit. I talked to um, family and friends in Chicago. I've talked to family and friends in Philly and New York, and they all said the same exact thing that I've said. We've never heard this word hoodoo used in our homes. And it wasn't until one day after I posted one of the videos, I got someone who responded, and they were from Mississippi. And then I had another individual. They responded. They were in Louisiana, and they said, "Well, yeah, okay, well, yeah, we've heard the word hoodoo," and that's pretty much what we grew up calling it. But in Detroit, Chicago, Philly, New York, like I said, we never heard this word hoodoo. We always refer to it as roots. So one day I it was stumping me because I was trying my best to figure out why. Where did this word come from? How come we don't call it this? How come they didn't call it this? Is this something that was made up? And finally, like I said, it stumped me. I got upset and I got, just really frustrated about it. And I said, you know what? Let me go ahead. Let me go ahead and talk to them. Let me go ahead and talk to the ancestors about this. And yeah, in hindsight, I probably should have talked to them first. But that's for another video. But anyway, decided let me go ahead. Let me go talk to them. So go ahead, sat in front of my altar, and I went ahead and I'm asking them, I'm telling them, I'm like, this is what's going on, presenting the facts to them. This is what I'm finding out, and this is what they're telling me. This is this is what people are saying. So which one is it? And they went ahead and they said they shared something with me, and it was really, really interesting. And what they shared with me was that they said, first of all, people got it wrong. They said, our spiritual tradition is not a folk magic. It's not a folk magic tradition. They said it was a spiritual system that focused on healing, resistance, and celebrating Black excellence because they were being denied the right to practice Christianity, and they were being denied to practice Christianity. They were being denied to read and write, which were basic human needs and practices that they had been doing when they were in the Congo and Angolan region, when they were in Africa. And this is what angered them, because now they were being reduced after knowing all this, after they were intelligent, okay? And like I said, in previous videos, most of them from the Congo and Angola region, they were Christians. And now they're being told you can't do any of these things. You can't read, you can't write, and you can't talk to your ancestors. That pissed them off. And that was the basis. That was the motivation that really angered them and made them rebel. Because it was like, how dare you deny me? How dare you deny me my human rights? How dare you deny me my needs? How dare you deny me and try to suppress me and suppress my intelligence and suppress who I am? That's what the tradition basically was. So as a result, they said within the spiritual tradition, there's the Conjurer, there's the Rootworker, and there's the Hoodoo. And these are not different. These are not different. They said these are different spiritual paths within the spiritual system. And these paths have their origin in the Congo Angolan culture. So in other words, the Conjurer, the Rootworker, and the Hoodoo, they were all doing this when they were over in the Congo Angolan region, and they're all over in Africa. They were practicing it. They were doing this. And when they were enslaved and brought over here, they just continued and kept doing this. They said it's not a specific path or anything, or not a specific system. It was just a path within the system. And that's when it was interesting. When I'm like I said, I'm meditating and they're showing me this, revealing this to me. Because they reminded me. They said, the first historical record of a conjure man is Sandy Jenkins, who was mentioned in Frederick Douglass's autobiography. And basically what they showed me, what they revealed to me, was that our ancestors' needs and our needs are intertwined. So what this means is that if you know the path that your ancestors were on, meaning if they were a conjurer, or if they were a root worker, or if they were a hoodoo, if you know which path they were on, this will help you to understand the spiritual system that they practiced in Africa, the spiritual system that they were practicing here in North America. And it would also help you to understand what spiritual practice or a path that you're supposed to be walking in order for you to serve your family and your community. Historians refer to the fact that after the emancipation of slavery, early African Americans migrated to certain areas around the country. These regions became cultural hubs of how our ancestors practiced their tradition, which many of us call today styles. One of the oldest styles was the Gullah Geechee or Low Country style, known for their strong African retentions, spirit communication, ritual use of water, and the famous ring shouts. Next, you have the Mississippi Delta region, also known as the Deep South region. Their style was characterized by the use of natural elements like herbs and roots, graveyard dirt, crossroad rituals, and charms for healing and protection, as well as causing harm. Next, you have the New Orleans and Southern Louisiana style. Their style was basically characterized by the blending of Creole, French Catholic, and the Voodoo religion to do candle rituals, psalm work, and extensive use of Grigri charms. Then you have the Appalachian style, which was characterized by their blending of the tradition with white mountain folk practices, resulting in the heavy use of herbs and the Bible for protection. You also had the Ozark or the Midwest style, and they were known distinctively for blending the Appalachian and German powwow practices to make herbal remedies and written spell work. Then you also had the urban region, which is characterized by their blending of the holiness in Pentecostal Christianity, spiritualism, and Black nationalism, and the use of candle work and commercial oils, incense, sprays, and roots. So, for instance, my grandparents, well, let me go back. My great-grandmother on my mother's side was Gullah Geechee, but she grew up in the Mississippi Delta region, actually Memphis. And my mother and grandparents on both sides were all from the Mississippi Delta region. And this is the style that they practice. When my grandparents migrated up to Detroit, or up to Michigan, which is basically ended up being Detroit, and my father's side of the family migrated to from the Arkansas area to, which is part of the Mississippi Delta region. They migrated up there to Chicago, and they went ahead and, both of them met and stuff. You see their style of their path now is now part of that holiness Pentecostal influence. This is what they needed. This is what their ancestors needed in order for them to, to evolve, in order for them to be elevated. And this is what my parents on that, from that perspective needed as well. But when I came about, because I was raised in Detroit, when I came about, my style, my conjure style, was influenced by the Pentecostals, by the Pentecostal and holiness churches. But it had a flair. It had a nationalistic flair. It also had a spiritualist flair. Now, again, because there was not a whole lot of information or a whole lot of research, put in our traditions, put in understanding our traditions, along with the assimilation process and being told, it was demonic and all that kind of stuff. Because of that, my parents didn't know this. Most of our parents did not know this. Because remember, after emancipation, and when people are trying to, the Black people are trying to migrate to different areas, and they're trying, a lot of people, they're pushing assimilate into mainstream society. And in order to assimilate into mainstream society, you got to drop that. You got to drop that tradition. You can't be doing that African stuff. And that's, for the most part, what a lot of people were encouraged to do. They didn't do it, and they didn't do it all at once. It was a gradual thing. But because of that gradual, dropping of our tradition, this is why when I went ahead, like I said, I come about, and I'm not told, we don't do the investigation of our system. We didn't research our system. We weren't really allowed to, and weren't encouraged to. Our folks weren't encouraged to do this. We're doing this now. So because they weren't allowed to and they weren't able to do this, when I come about, yeah, I got the Pentecostal thing. I got that church thing going on, which we're starting to see now. This also come from the Congo too. All right. This is that stuff that come from the Congo as well. I did a video on that. But I need that spiritualist part. I need something to dealing with the spirits. Because hey, Granny comes from that Gullah Geechee. She dealing with them spirits. She was talking about them spirits. That's her stuff. My folks, my grandparents, and my parents, they were, and you know, for the most part, they're encouraged to turn their back on it, but they're dealing with spirit communication. But now when I come about, no one wants to talk about spirits. So that's why I'm sitting there like, what the heck? What's going on? I'm not understanding what's happening. You know, why are y'all treating me this way? You know, and this is what was going on. And because of that, I did get the nationalistic aspect. And that's the reason why my conjure style is pro-black. It got some consciousness in it. Okay. But I couldn't get that spiritualist aspect. Even though it was in Detroit. Okay, there were spiritualist churches in Detroit. I remember visiting them. I remember going and seeing them. I remember going to the candle shops and, you know, a couple of the candle shops in Detroit. And the spiritualist movement was there. But they didn't invest in it because they were told, our folks were told, stay away from that kind of stuff. That's demonic stuff. Okay. And like I said, it's because of that. This is what led me now. I understand. This is what led me now to venture off. Try to find someone who's dealing with this. Try to understand spiritualism, which basically led me to meet my mentor from Cuba, who introduced me to Espiritismo Cruzado. And after going ahead and getting that, after going ahead and understanding spiritualism, even though I'm not understanding spiritualism or spiritism from the African American experience, I'm understanding it from a Afro-Caribbean experience, even though it's not mine, even though I'm not getting it. After I go ahead and do it, this is what allows me to go back, and now I'm able to heal. I'm able to do my tradition. I'm able to do my style. And now that I'm able to do my style, I'm able to help my family, and help my community. So it's very important that you know your spiritual tribe. If you know your spiritual tribe and where they hail from, this will give you a better understanding the path that you're supposed to be taking. See, because of me knowing this now, because of me knowing, oh, this is where my family came from. This is where they hail from. This is what they were dealing with. I can go back and I can trace it now and I can find out, oh, they were all conjurers. I come from a line of conjurers. There was a few root workers in my line, okay? And before I go any further, let me first, I don't want people to get confused and think that you only had to deal with this. That's not what I'm saying. And that's not what they're saying. They're saying that the actual specific paths was conjurer, root work, and hoodoo. Okay? So the reason why I kept saying we never used it is because the hoodoos are, they didn't go, they stayed in Mississippi. They stayed in that Mississippi Delta region. That's the reason why we never heard of it. We had root workers. We have a few root workers that ventured up. And we also had, but we had a lot of conjurers. And it was the conjurers that basically, for the most part, a lot of us end up going, a lot of our conjurers, a lot of our conjurer ancestors end up going to Detroit, Chicago, Philly, New York, places like that. Okay? Now, like I said, the reason why you want to know this and the reason why you want to understand this, and you need to, again, I can't tell you and I can't do the work for you. You have to talk to your ancestors and find out what it is. Find out what was the path that they were doing. What was the path they were working on? Because it was interrupted, and that's what's pissing them off. They're pissed off because they were interrupted in doing what they were doing and doing their practices and doing their healing practices and helping. And here they're being denied the right, their God-given right to go ahead and heal their family, to protect their family, protect their loved ones. Yeah. So when you think about it from that perspective, yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense now. It's like, oh yeah, this is not, it's not a folk magic. It's not folk magic. This is about healing, resistance, and celebration of our culture. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that gives you a little bit more insight. And like I said, if you really want to get into this, you really trying to figure out, are you called to this or are you not? That's a great way to find out. Because you'll find out, and this is something I'm being told now, you'll find out that if you're doing this, you're doing this, but you ain't getting no connection, it's because this ain't your path. All right. If you just, I remember the first time. When I went ahead, and I'm gonna make it short, but I remember the first time when I went ahead and I started doing stuff, and I'm dibbling and dabbling and all that kind of stuff, and things ain't working out. And after I went ahead and, now when I'm looking at this, it's like the reason why it wasn't working out was because that's not my path. They're not supporting me on this. All right. That's the reason why certain things, they don't vibe right. Certain things, you're not picking up on that vibe. It's the other thing is, and this is what they're telling me about this is why I kept arguing and kept fighting about the whole hoodoo thing and witchcraft. The hoodoo path basically incorporated a lot of witchcraft. That's part of the reason why the conjurers, which were mostly in the church, this is not to say that everybody did not go to church. This is not to say that only conjurers went to church. What they're showing me and what they've revealed to me was that everybody basically went to church and everything. Okay, we have this distorted view of our tradition because there's other people writing about it and saying, oh, we had these witch doctors and all that. That's not what they're showing me. All right. What they're showing me is that everybody did certain things. Everybody, because the paths, they intertwined, they also mixed. But a lot of the conjurers, they always stayed in the church. And it wasn't because they were just that devoted to this. They were just that devoted to Jesus. That wasn't the case. That's what they needed in order for them to practice their tradition, practice their craft, if you want to say, which connected them to addressing the needs of their ancestors and their needs. The hoodoos, on the other hand, they dibbled and dabbled in other things. And that's the reason why when I was growing up, they always said, oh, and they always, like I said, we all got negative light, but they always said, that's witchcraft. And it wasn't because it was witchcraft. It was mainly because what was going on is that a lot of the hoodoos, they dealt with that outside stuff. Individual that comes to mind is Pascal. Okay, I believe it's Rudolph Pascal. All right, prime example of a hoodooer. Right, these individuals, and like I said, these were individuals who actually, they're more, from my understanding, the way it's been explained to me, they were more like alchemists. But again, we all got that negative portrayal because we allowed other people to basically interpret our thing. So, like I said, I'm gonna cut it short. We'll save it for another video. If you got comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to drop me a line. Remember, if you're interested in the books and all that, go to the Land of Cam. All right, go to the Land of Cam website. Try to not deal with the whole Amazon thing. Again, working with some people, we trying to get the Land of Cam shop on the road, get it moving so we can go ahead and address our needs, address our things without any interference. Okay? Until next time, fam. Head to poo. Peace.